The night was a suffocating blanket, only pierced by the twin blades of light slicing through the desolate highway. Inside the crimson Ferrari, Isabella clutched her swollen belly, a silent prayer escaping her lips with each bump in the road. 8 months pregnant, she felt like a fragile vessel carrying precious cargo, while her husband, Damien Blackwood, drove in grim silence. His profile, etched with a cold resolve, offered no comfort, only a growing unease that coiled in her stomach like a venomous snake. Damien Blackwood, a titan in the tech world, a man who commanded fortunes with a flick of his wrist, had been radiating a chilling detachment for weeks. "Damien," Isabella began, her voice a mere tremor in the vast expanse of the car. "Can we please stop? I need to stretch my legs." His knuckles tightened around the steering wheel. "Can't it wait, Isabella? We're almost there." His tone was clipped, devoid of the affection she once knew. "It's uncomfortable," she managed, the baby shifting uncomfortably. "Please, Damien, just for a few minutes." With a barely perceptible sigh, he yanked the car off the highway at the next exit, pulling into a desolate gas station bathed in the sickly glow of flickering fluorescent lights. Isabella exhaled, a small measure of relief washing over her. "I won't be long," she promised, reaching for the door handle. Damien didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. A knot tightened in Isabella's chest. This wasn't just weariness from the long drive. This was something deeper, something sinister. She hesitated, wanting to voice her fears, but the words caught in her throat, choked by a premonition of impending disaster. She stepped out of the car, the desert wind whipping around her, and waddled towards the gas station restroom, completely unaware that this would be the last glimpse she would ever have of that crimson Ferrari. Inside the dingy restroom, Isabella splashed cold water on her face, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. "Just a little longer," she whispered, trying to summon the strength to face whatever lay ahead. She dried her hands and pushed open the door, stepping back into the harsh glare of the gas station lights. But the space where the Ferrari had been was empty. A jolt of ice shot through her veins. "Damien?" she called, her voice cracking with rising panic. The silence that answered was absolute. Her fingers fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so violently she almost dropped it. She dialed Damien's number, the ringing echoing in the sudden, deafening quiet. The call went straight to voicemail. A single text message flashed across her screen, a message from Damien. "It's over. Take care." Isabella staggered back, her mind refusing to comprehend the words. She dialed again and again, each attempt met with the same cold, impersonal voicemail greeting. No, this couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. The ground seemed to sway beneath her feet as the horrifying truth slammed into her. He had left her, abandoned her. A wave of nausea washed over her, followed by a sharp stabbing pain in her stomach. If he wasn't here, then where was he? The answer arrived in the form of another text message, this time from an unknown number. A photograph. Isabella's breath hitched as she saw the image. Damien, tanned and relaxed, at a luxurious beach resort, arm in arm with Serena, his executive assistant. The woman Isabella had suspected for months, the woman Damien had always dismissed as just a colleague. There they were, toasting with champagne, their faces glowing with a shared, cruel amusement. The world tilted. The gas station lights buzzed with a malevolent hum. Her husband, the father of her child, had left her to rot in this desolate place, while he celebrated with his mistress. Isabella shivered, the desert air suddenly biting. She reached into her designer handbag, searching for her wallet. Empty. Damien had taken everything. Her credit cards, her driver's license, even the emergency cash she kept hidden in a small zippered compartment. She was stranded, penniless, pregnant, and alone. The gas station attendant had already locked up for the night, the closed sign blinking mockingly above the darkened windows. Isabella turned towards the highway, scanning the darkness for headlights. Nothing. Only an endless ribbon of asphalt stretching into the black void. Then the rain began. A cold, unforgiving downpour that soaked through her thin designer dress, chilling her to the bone. Isabella pulled her arms around herself, trying to ward off the growing despair. She had to move. She had to do something. She couldn't just stand here and succumb to the overwhelming panic. With each step, her body grew heavier, the weight of exhaustion, heartbreak, and betrayal pressing down on her. Another sharp pain ripped through her abdomen, stealing her breath. "No, no, no," she gasped, doubling over, clutching her stomach. It was too early. She wasn't due for weeks. Panic clawed at her throat, choking her. Another contraction hit, stronger this time, sending her stumbling against a rusted streetlight. The world blurred, her vision darkening at the edges. She needed help. Now. But there was no one. No cars, no houses, no signs of life. Only the relentless rain and the sound of her own ragged breathing. She was going to collapse right here, alone, in the middle of nowhere. Her child, her innocent baby, was at risk. As Isabella felt her knees buckle, a pair of headlights pierced through the darkness. A vehicle. She tried to raise her hand, to scream, but her strength was failing. The car slowed, then stopped. The driver's door swung open, and a tall figure emerged, holding an umbrella against the downpour. He moved towards her quickly, concern etched on his face. "Miss, are you all right?" Isabella blinked through the rain, barely able to make out his features. Her lips moved, but no words came. Another contraction ripped through her body, sending her collapsing forward. Strong arms caught her just in time. "I've got you," a voice said, low and steady. The world felt distant, as if she were floating in a sea of darkness. She registered the sensation of being lifted, of strong arms cradling her trembling body. The rain still poured, but she was no longer standing alone in the storm. Somewhere close, the voice spoke again, urgent and reassuring. "Stay with me, miss. Just hold on." She wanted to answer, to say, "I'm trying," but the words wouldn't come. Her body had betrayed her. Then warmth. A car door opening. The scent of leather and clean linen. The sound of an engine roaring to life. She was moving. Then, darkness. Isabella awoke to the harsh glare of fluorescent lights and the sterile scent of antiseptic. Her eyelids felt heavy, but she forced them open. White walls, the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. A hospital. A wave of panic surged through her. "Her baby!" she gasped, trying to sit up, but a firm yet gentle hand pressed her back down. "Easy," a voice said. "You're safe." Isabella's vision cleared, and she found herself staring up into the face of a man she had never seen before. Tall, dark hair slightly tousled, kind eyes that held a depth of understanding. Not Damien. Someone else. Someone genuine. Her throat was dry, her voice barely a whisper. Where am I?" "County Hospital," he replied, adjusting the blanket around her. "You collapsed from exhaustion and stress. Your baby is fine, but you need to rest." Isabella blinked, trying to piece together what had happened. Then it all came crashing back. Damien, the gas station, the text message, the photograph of him with Serena. A sharp pain twisted in her chest. Before she could drown in the memory, the man spoke again. "I found you on the side of the road. You were barely conscious. I had to get you here fast." His tone was calm, but there was a lingering edge of concern. Isabella swallowed, feeling the lump in her throat grow. You saved me." A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I guess you could say that." She stared at him, processing his words. "Who are you?" "David Ashton," he answered. "Doctor. I was on my way home when I saw you in the rain." A doctor. Her rescuer wasn't just anyone. He was a man who had dedicated his life to saving others, and now he had saved her too. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then David leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Isabella, I need to ask you something." Her gaze flickered to him. He knew her name. "The hospital ran a check on your ID while you were unconscious," he explained, as if reading her mind. "And I noticed something strange." She stiffened. "You had no emergency contact listed. No one to call." He tilted his head slightly. "Where is your husband?" Isabella felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. The question cut deep, forcing her to relive the betrayal all over again. She could lie, say that Damien was away on business, that he would be here soon. But looking at David, this man who had saved her, who had treated her with nothing but kindness, she knew she couldn't. Her lips trembled. He left me. David's jaw tightened. What do you mean he left you? His voice was softer now, but there was something dangerous beneath it. Isabella inhaled shakily, staring down at her hands. We were on a road trip. He pulled into a gas station, told me to go inside, and then he just drove away. David's expression darkened. You're 8 months pregnant. She let out a broken laugh. Trust me, I know. A beat of silence. Then David ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head in disbelief. And where is he now? Isabella swallowed past the lump in her throat. At a beach resort with his mistress. The words felt like acid leaving her tongue. David's entire body went rigid. For a moment he didn't speak. Then, that bastard. The sheer disgust in his voice surprised her. Not pity, not empty sympathy, but rage. On her behalf, Isabella blinked, startled by the way her chest tightened. Not with sadness, not with longing, but with something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. A sense of being protected. David exhaled slowly, trying to compose himself. Look, he said, his voice calmer now, but still firm. You don't have to tell me everything, but I need you to know something. She met his gaze. You're not alone. Isabella's breath hitched. I'm not? No. He leaned forward slightly. You have nowhere to go, no one to turn to, and I can't, in good conscience, just let you walk out of here with no plan. She stared at him, disbelief flooding her veins. Why are you doing this? She whispered. David held her gaze, unwavering. Because someone should have done it for you a long time ago. A lump formed in her throat. She had spent so long believing she wasn't worth saving, that no one would ever choose to stay. But this man, this stranger, had stopped for her in the rain, had brought her here, had promised she wasn't alone. For the first time in years, Isabella felt something stir inside her. Hope. The days that followed blurred together. Isabella was discharged from the hospital, her body still weak, but thanks to David's unwavering kindness, she wasn't facing this alone. She had expected him to drop her off at a shelter or maybe a cheap motel. But instead, you'll stay with me until we figure something out, he had said. She had been too exhausted to protest, and that was how Isabella found herself in David Ashton's home. His house was nothing like the cold, sterile mansion she had shared with Damien. It was warm, filled with books, soft blankets, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. For the first time in years, Isabella felt safe. David had set up a guest room for her, making sure it had everything she needed. Extra pillows for her aching back, warm socks, and even a stack of baby books. Just in case you get bored, he had joked. But it was the first time in a long time someone had thought about her comfort. It made her chest tighten in a way she couldn't explain. David made sure she attended every prenatal checkup, driving her to the clinic himself. He didn't hover, didn't push for details about her past, but his presence was steady, like an anchor keeping her from drifting away. Isabella, however, was still struggling to let go of the past. There were nights when she woke up in a cold sweat, the memory of Damien's betrayal suffocating her. She would sit on the edge of the bed, hand resting on her belly, whispering soft reassurances to her baby. We're okay now, she would murmur. We'll be okay. And in the quiet of the house, she would hear David moving around, as if he knew she needed to hear another person breathing nearby. She never asked if he stayed awake on purpose, and he never mentioned it. One morning, as Isabella sat at the kitchen table, staring at the cup of tea David had made her, she felt something shift inside her. For so long she had been defined by Damien, by his wealth, his power, his cruelty. She had been his wife, his possession, his afterthought. Now she had nothing to her name. But maybe, just maybe, that was a good thing. She had a blank slate, a chance to become someone new. She lifted her chin, determination flickering in her eyes. I want to get a job, she said. David looked up from the medical journal he had been reading. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes." She nodded firmly. "I can't sit here feeling sorry for myself. I need to stand on my own 2 feet." David studied her for a long moment, then a small smile tugged at his lips. "All right," he said. "Let's find you something." And just like that, Isabella Blackwood stopped being a woman defined by her past and started becoming the woman in control of her future. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Damien Blackwood basked in the sun at a luxurious beach resort, seemingly carefree. His phone buzzed incessantly, but he ignored the calls and emails, choosing to lose himself in the moment. He believed he had escaped the burden of Isabella and could now live life on his terms, but he was wrong. The world was about to turn on him. It began with a leaked security camera video, a short, grainy clip, but damning nonetheless. The footage showed a gas station parking lot late at night, a heavily pregnant woman, Isabella, stepping out of a crimson Ferrari. Moments later, the car sped away, leaving her behind, alone and confused. The timestamp on the video confirmed everything. Damien Blackwood had abandoned his heavily pregnant wife in the middle of nowhere. Within hours, the clip had gone viral. The internet erupted in fury. How could someone do this? She was carrying his child. He left her like garbage. Damien Blackwood is a monster! People dug deeper, uncovering the truth about Damien's infidelity. Articles surfaced about how he had been at a luxury resort with Serena just days after Isabella's abandonment. Soon, hashtags like #JusticeForIsabella and #BoycottBlackwoodTech began trending worldwide. It wasn't just social media outrage. It became a corporate nightmare. Damien's company, Blackwood Tech, was one of the biggest tech firms in the world, but its success depended on public image and investor trust. Now, both were crumbling. Clients pulled out, stock prices plummeted, and major partners distanced themselves. A formal investigation into Damien's ethics began, and worst of all, his board of directors held an emergency meeting to discuss removing him from the company. Damien went from being a respected tech titan to a man whose name was synonymous with betrayal and disgrace. And just when he thought things couldn't get worse, Serena turned on him. The moment Serena realized Damien's money and reputation were collapsing, she changed overnight. "Babe, don't worry," Damien had told her when he first saw the headlines. "This will blow over." But Serena wasn't stupid. She had been with him for the lifestyle, the luxuries, the power. Now, Damien was damaged goods, and Serena had no interest in staying on a sinking ship. So she packed her bags, drained the credit card he had given her, and left him with a single note on the hotel nightstand. "Oops, looks like you lost everything. Guess I'll take my leave now. Have fun cleaning up your mess." And just like that, Damien Blackwood, once a man who had everything, was now a man who had nothing. And the worst part? Isabella had never even lifted a finger to destroy him. He had done it all on his own. A knock on the door came late one evening. Isabella had just finished putting away the last of the baby clothes David had helped her pick out, feeling lighter than she had in months. Her belly was rounder now, her due date approaching fast, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of the future. She was ready for it. Knock, knock, knock. Her fingers froze on the fabric of a tiny onesie. Something about the sound felt wrong. David wasn't supposed to be back for another hour, and no one else ever came by unannounced. Slowly, her heart pounding, she moved to the door. When she opened it, Damien stood there. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she simply stared, unable to process that he was really here. But he was. Damien Blackwood, her ex-husband, the man who had abandoned her, the man who had left her to suffer while he ran off with another woman, stood on her doorstep, looking nothing like the man she remembered. His suit, once perfectly tailored, was wrinkled. His face, always clean-shaven, was now shadowed with stubble. And his eyes, once sharp and arrogant, were filled with desperation. "Isabella!" His voice was hoarse, almost pleading. She said nothing, gripping the edge of the door as she fought the urge to slam it in his face. But Damien took that as an invitation to step forward. "Please," he continued. I just want to talk." Isabella lifted her chin, her voice cold and steady. "Why?" Damien exhaled sharply, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I made a mistake," he admitted, his jaw clenching. I should have never left. Left you. Her fingers tightened on the doorframe. And yet, you did. His throat bobbed. I wasn't thinking straight, Isabella. I was stupid. Selfish. I don't know what got into me. Isabella let out a humorless laugh. I do. Her face twisted in confusion. You thought I was weak. He flinched. You thought I had nowhere to go, that I would fall apart without you, that I would come crawling back, begging for you to take me in. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. But guess what, Damien? She lifted a hand to her swollen belly. I survived. Damien's eyes flickered to her belly, realization finally hitting him. She didn't need him. Not anymore. Not ever again. His face tightened, and he scrambled for words. Isabella, please. I lost everything. Serena. She left me the moment things got bad. My company's gone. My reputation destroyed. He took a step closer, reaching out. You were always the best thing in my life, and I was too blind to see it. But now... She pulled back before he could touch her, her stomach twisting not with sadness, not with longing, but with disgust. He wasn't here because he loved her. He was here because he had no one else, and she refused to be his second choice. Isabella took a deep breath, looking Damien directly in the eyes. You're not sorry you left me, she said calmly. You're sorry that I moved on without you. Damien opened his mouth, but no words came, because he knew she was right. She stepped back, her hand tightening on the doorknob. You don't get to come back now, Damien. Not after everything. She gave him one last look, not with hate, not with anger, but with something even worse. Indifference. I found happiness without you, she said simply. And I don't need you anymore. Then she closed the door in his face, and this time, it was Damien Blackwood who was left standing in the cold. The night was quiet, except for the rhythmic beeping of the hospital monitors and the occasional hushed voices of nurses passing by. Isabella lay in the hospital bed, her body exhausted, but her heart full in a way she had never known before. In her arms, wrapped in a soft white blanket, was her newborn son. Tiny, perfect, hers. Tears welled in her eyes as she traced her finger along his delicate cheek. We did it, baby, she whispered, her voice trembling. We made it. Across the room, sitting in a chair by her bedside, David watched the two of them with quiet admiration. He had been there every step of the way, holding her hand when the contractions became unbearable, whispering words of encouragement when she thought she couldn't push any longer, making sure the doctors and nurses gave her the best care possible. And now, he was still here, even though she wouldn't blame him if he had left after making sure she was safe. But he hadn't, and something about that made her chest ache in the best possible way. David stood up and walked over to her, his movements careful as if afraid of disturbing the peaceful moment. How are you feeling? He asked gently. Isabella looked up at him, her eyes tired but softer than before. Like I've finally woken up, she admitted. His lips curled into a small smile. He's beautiful, David said, glancing down at the baby in her arms. Just like his mother. Isabella felt her cheeks warm, but she didn't look away this time, because, for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the need to run from affection. David hesitated for a moment before speaking again. Isabella, I need to tell you something. Her heart skipped a beat. You don't owe me anything, he started, his voice steady. I didn't help you because I expected something in return. I helped you because... He exhaled, shaking his head with a small chuckle. Because I care about you more than I ever expected to. Her breath caught in her throat. David, you don't have to say anything. He interrupted softly. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I want to be here for you, for him, for whatever comes next. The weight of his words settled deep in her heart. He wasn't making promises he couldn't keep. He wasn't asking for anything she wasn't ready to give. He was simply offering himself. And for the first time in her life, Isabella allowed herself to accept love rather than just survive it. She reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. "I think," she whispered, smiling for the first time in what felt like forever, "that I want you to be here too." And as David squeezed her hand in silent understanding, Isabella knew she had finally found her true happiness. The soft morning light streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow over the cozy living room. The sound of soft singing filled the air as Isabella rocked her baby gently in her arms. Her son, her beautiful, strong little boy, stretched his tiny fingers toward her, his warm brown eyes filled with innocence and trust. And beside her, watching over them with quiet devotion, was David. Their new life had begun, and for the first time in years, Isabella felt free. A few years later, Isabella smiled as she watched her son playing with David in the backyard. They were a family, forged not by shared blood, but by love, loyalty, and resilience. Isabella had built a successful business creating sustainable baby clothes, her designs reflecting the strength and beauty she found in overcoming adversity. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a creator, a mother, and a woman deeply loved. Damien's story, however, remained a cautionary tale. His life spiraled further into despair. Haunted by his past actions and the overwhelming weight of regret, he became a recluse. The diamond-studded life he once craved had crumbled into dust, leaving him utterly alone. Isabella's story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope remains. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love. What choices are you making today that will shape your tomorrow? Are you building your life on a foundation of genuine values and meaningful connections? Or are you chasing fleeting pleasures that will ultimately leave you empty? I wish you good health and a life filled with purpose and love. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that will touch your heart and inspire your soul. Remember, no matter how challenging life may seem, you have the strength within you to create a beautiful and fulfilling future.